Welcome on into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time for the Week 5 quarterback and tight end rankings. So, we'll start off with the quarterbacks, and on the screen, any color coding. Red is the good, the deeper, the darker, the red, the better, goes to white, neutral, going down to blue, cold, bad, however you want to think of it. And just to the left of the names, you can see as well, I have like my player temperature gauge. This is just a reading of several different elements into whether these players are primed to have a good week or a poor week. That has the Las Vegas line is a part of that. The player PFF grade is a part of that. So several different factors that I just have to gauge the likelihood of them having a boom week or the likelihood of them having a bust week. If it's a deep blue color, more likely that they have a bust week. Also, you can find all of these up on the website. They will, be updated throughout the week, and there are links down in the description to each of the positions. All of them are available now up on the website. And when you look at them, you can also just click on this little tab here, and you can see that this is just a much more simple look at the rankings if you would prefer that. Hey, a real quick thank you to my channel members, The Roll 07, Jay Berg, Robbie D, Nicholas Costa. I appreciate you very much, and you too can become a member for just 99 cents. With that out of the way, we've got some quarterback rankings to look at, and first, we'll look back last week. How did I do with my loves and my fades? Loves, fades, just like starts and sits. Very similar idea. And last week, overall, this year, quarterback, I've been pretty good. Last week for the loves, I gave you Geno Smith. He ended up as the quarterback 8. Great. I faded Patrick Mahomes. He ended up as the quarterback 18. Great. With that, let's move on to this week's rankings. We have our first 5 quarterbacks, my first tier of quarterbacks, and these tiers are just most likely, as I update rankings, most likely the players will stay within these tiers. Sometimes they do move out of them, but there you go. And if I didn't mention it, these are projections over here that you can see, it's a lower end and a higher end projection instead of it just being one number. So it's a little more accurate in terms of that. Let's give you, let's see. These are just your must starts. I don't think there's too much question this week in general for the quarterback position. A lot of it's pretty straightforward. So, obviously, Brock Purdy, just banking on him improving, but it's a very good matchup against Arizona for that to happen. As you can see by the temperature gauge there, it's bright red. Let's bring us on to the second tier of quarterbacks. Kicks off with Kyler Murray as my QB6, followed by Joe Burrow, CJ Stroud, and Justin Fields. What quarterbacks do you think I have too high, too low? Would you flip? Do you have a question on in terms of your two starting? And I can give you a little bit more details into some of those thoughts. But, Kyler Murray, he's been a little up and down this season, which caused me to push him down a little bit further than Brock Purdy. For Justin Fields, as you can see, the floor is there. He is inconsistent. He has 2 weeks with below 12 fantasy points. He has one huge week, and he has like an 18-point week. So the huge week's doing a lot of heavy lifting in a year where quarterbacks aren't scoring a whole lot anyways, or scoring, less than we're typically used to. Still, I do love Justin Fields this week. Dallas is a good matchup, and with them missing with them missing DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons from Dallas's front 7, that's going to help Justin Fields to have a productive day. However, as I said, he is a flawed player. That floor does concern me just a little bit, so I'll just take a little bit of a safer play with a couple of guys. That's about it. Also, there's a very realistic chance that he has a massive day, and that's why I do love him and would be more than happy to play him this week. There you go. My number 9 quarterback brings us on to the second tier of quarterbacks, kicking off with Baker Mayfield as my QB 10 this week, going up against Atlanta. Geno Smith going up against the New York Giants at QB 11, and Anthony Richardson going up against Jacksonville at quarterback 12. So very nice matchup. You can see he projects incredibly well. Running quarterbacks do tend to project a little bit better overall, and for a reason. They do tend to do a little bit better overall generally. But yeah, I'm not quite buying these projections fully, and there's a chance that he doesn't even play this week, so we'll see about that. But I'm thinking it's likely he'll play it, and that's why I am projecting him and ranking him. That's going to bring us on to this next tier of quarterbacks from quarterback 13 down to quarterback 17. And it kicks off with Patrick Mahomes, followed by Sam Darnold, Dak Prescott, Trevor Lawrence, and Deshaun Watson. And it's a weird tier, man. You got Sam Darnold, who's been very good this season in a tough matchup against the New York Jets. You got Patrick Mahomes in a slightly better matchup, who obviously, he hasn't done as well. A matchup I'm not very excited about. I don't know what to do with these guys. We got Dak Prescott, who's been quite good this season, but he's also in a very tough matchup against Pittsburgh. I should almost certainly have Patrick Mahomes ranked lower than I do. I don't know. Trevor Lawrence, though, then in a really, really good matchup. He hasn't been very good this season, but he's projecting quite nicely. Do I go higher here? Deshaun Watson, I'm afraid to like him too much, but he's got Washington, so that's a nice matchup there. All in all, it's kind of coming out as a neutral matchup, though, so I'm kind of okay leaving him where I'm at. But what do you think with this tier? What should I do to fix it up? I'm not in love with it. And that's going to bring us on to this next tier, which has some guys who might want to take a risk on. We got Aaron Rodgers looking like a nice solid floor against Minnesota. Should get plenty of opportunity. Just might not be, the most efficient with it. Derek Carr going against Kansas City has some high upside, but also it's a little bit of a risky matchup in terms of the floor, as you can see. Caleb Williams, hasn't done really well. Really good matchup. So you see this kind of pattern that's working us out through a lot of the guys in these tiers. Kirk Cousins, a good matchup. Hasn't played fantastically in terms of fantasy either. So he actually projects worse than Caleb Williams. And then we got Andy Dalton, who has been really good into 2 weeks going against Chicago. Chicago's been an okay matchup, but we know that it's a pretty tough defense. So how do things break out with that game? I'm making a bet on how I think that they'll end up working out, and I think that part of the Chicago Bears' defensive issues can be attributed to their offensive woes. I think Chicago's offense has figured enough out that they'll be at least average against Carolina's defense. With 2 weeks of film on this Carolina offense and an offense not putting this Bears defense in bad situations, I think that this defense can hold Andy Dalton to, at the very least, or whatever, an average day at best is what I wrote. So you get the idea. Obviously he could have a better day, but that's just kind of not how I'm projecting it, and I just walked you through the thought process there. Next tier here, Daniel Jones, Matt Stafford, Tyler Huntley, Bo Nix, before we just get into the guys where I'm not really giving too much thought to playing in any format. Gardner Minshew, Jacoby Brissett, going up against Miami himself. So there we go. Let's look at the tight end position next. I know this doesn't fit on the screen as nicely with all this blank space over here. We're just going to live with that once again at the bottom here. If you want a simpler version, you can just click on that up on the website, www.theff4.com. Links down in the description to see that information. And how did I do last week with my loves and my fades? Once again, just like starts, sits. Love obviously being the start. I give you Zach Ertz as my love. He finished as the tight end 16. I stand by the process here. I thought that Washington would score a lot, thus giving several opportunities for Zach Ertz to possibly get a touchdown on top of, whatever floor he gave you. And they did score a lot of points, but Zach Ertz wasn't a part of that. So that's why he ends up as tight end 16 instead of the tight end 7 or 8. In terms of the fades, we got Hunter Henry. I faded him for the second week in a row, and it was good for me to do that because for the second week in a row, he finished very poorly, finished as the tight end 37 this time around, and rightfully faded him. So bring us on to my week 5 rankings, and this is kind of simple in terms of how we've tiered this out this week. So my first tier begins at tight end 1, of course, with George Kittle, followed by Brock Bowers, Jake Ferguson, Trey McBride, Travis Kelce, who I've got a love tag on. I'll explain that in a moment. Dalton Kincaid, Pat Freiermuth, Evan Ingram, David Njoku. So I don't often love to put a love tag here on a guy like Travis Kelce, but I just want to express how excited I am about him going forward. And that has to do with the injury to Rashee Rice. And this is something that I've been saying since before Kansas City actually drafted Rashee Rice, because I actually predicted that Kansas City would draft Rashee Rice. I thought he was a great fit for them. Why did I think he's a great fit for them? Because I thought he was a great fit for an aging Travis Kelce to take over that role. Yes, he's not a tight end, but you can't find any you can't just go shopping around for a tight end that can do what Travis Kelce does. But you can maybe find a wide receiver who can absolutely just kill zones and be your target absorber to help just continue to move an offense. And that's what they did with Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is injured, so now I expect a lot of that target share to be moved over to Travis Kelce, and for him to once again be very fantasy relevant, have a very high floor, and if they can move the ball well enough, he had a couple touchdowns in there, also have that nice ceiling that we're used to. Maybe he won't be quite the Travis Kelce of old. The main roadblock in the way, I would say, is Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, he's gotten quite banged up. He's not the guy he was when he came into the league. We thought that he might be, but he did do well with Kansas City just not too long ago. And if he finds a little bit of rejuvenation, that's somebody to just keep an eye on to see what that target share looks like this week, or maybe add to your roster prior to the week going, and just to speculate and see what comes of that. So there you go. There's my pitch for Travis Kelce rest of the season. Maybe you can buy low on him, would be an idea as well. And so, yes, I'm loving him in it's not the greatest of matchups. I'm not too excited about fantasy points overall in that game. And I do also want to talk about Evan Ingram here. Evan Ingram, David Njoku, both of them are on the mend. Might play this week, might not. We don't know yet, but I am projecting them. I do think that there's, let's say at least a 50% chance for both of them to be playing. So first up here, obviously you can see the projections aren't too great on Evan Ingram right now. Of course, that should make sense, but going up against the Indianapolis Colts have allowed the third most points to the tight end position in half PPR. Ingram was one of the tight ends that I was more excited about coming into the season, and I still am, so I'm quite happy to try and get him out there. Obviously, Njoku, Washington, you think Cleveland might be able to score a few touchdowns in that game, so there's some upside there as well. That's going to bring us on to this second tier of tight ends, which goes from tight end 10 down to tight end 14. Tucker Kraft, Zach Ertz, Isaiah Likely, Kyle Pitts, Cole Kmet, in that order. Not too much to talk about with this tier. However, we do have my fade at the tight end position in Cole Kmet, so we can talk about that. Going up against Carolina, somehow I almost went right over that. Obviously, as you can see, Cole Kmet does project well. He's in a good matchup against Carolina, but don't get too hyped on Cole Kmet. This is a small sample size thing. This is still a theory that we are play testing to see how it works for, hopefully rest of the season. But last week I speculated on why not to play Cole Kmet, why not to get too excited about him with Keenan Allen returning. And I did move him down in my rankings. Keenan Allen returned, and Cole Kmet did not have a good week. In fact, in 2 weeks with Keenan Allen on the field, Cole Kmet is averaging 2 receptions for 19 yards on average. That's 2.9 half PPR fantasy points on average while Keenan Allen is also on the field. However, when Keenan Allen is not on the field, Cole Kmet is averaging 7 receptions for 62 yards and a half of a touchdown, which comes to 12.7 half PPR fantasy points on average over those 2 games. There's some questions to be answered in terms of, is this really a thing, or is this a thing that's happened so far in the season and will not project forward so well? I think it's something that projects forward so very well, because I think that they both eat from the same plate. Quick route, center of the field types of things, types of targets. So there's only so many of those to go around. You're competing with Keenan Allen. Even at this age, he's still very, very good router and an ability to get open and make things easier for his quarterback. And, maybe gets a yard or two further down the field than Cole Kmet does, and just a little bit quicker than Cole Kmet, because Cole Kmet's probably going to have to chip somebody on his way out often enough. Now that's going to bring us on to the next tier of tight ends. We're not going to go like that. That's going to be tight end 15 on down to 23. So now we're at that second tier of, usable guys. There's not a huge difference, but there's a slight difference. Tier drop off to my tight end 15, Taysom Hill, followed by Colby Parkinson, Mike Gesicki, Dalton Schultz, Noah Fant, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, Cade Otton, and Mark Andrews. And I've got some notes on some of these guys, starting off with Taysom Hill going up against Kansas City. Kansas City has allowed the most points to the tight end position, but Taysom Hill is not a traditional tight end. He may or may not play, but I've never been much of a fan of chasing points, and that's almost always what it is with Taysom outside of a 4-game stretch or so last season where he actually put back-to-back games together. Typically, they seem to come fairly randomly, tough to predict. I just don't like chasing it myself. That's a me thing, maybe. I don't know. But there you go. Some people love him. So still deserves to be ranked this high. There is that upside, obviously, and it is a good tight end matchup. He does go out every now and then on some routes. But yeah, that could be something in DFS to look at. New Orleans tight end, touch base on some of those other tight ends, Dwan Johnson or Foster Moreau or Dwan Johnson. It could be guys. I would say Foster Moreau, actually, but, maybe Dwan Johnson's a guy to look at there. Colby Parkinson is going up against Green Bay. Green Bay is a verifiably good matchup for tight ends. They tend to struggle in the middle of the field, guarding the middle of the field, right where tight ends love to live. So that could be an area, that's a definite, could have been a love target there for Colby Parkinson. Follow that by Mike Gesicki and Eric All. A couple notes here based on the matchup against Baltimore. Baltimore is basically tied with Kansas City as clearly being the best tight end matchup in the league at this point in the season. Unfortunately, Cincinnati's tight end situation is not incredibly clear. And so, to me, this is more of a DFS bet. Go out there, get Mike Gesicki, or I think even better so, especially for the price difference, I assume, Eric All. There you go. That's Cincinnati. And then we got a note on Cade Otton going up against Atlanta. Atlanta is not as good of a tight end matchup as the fantasy points against would suggest. They have allowed a rushing touchdown to a tight end, which has really skewed their points allowed to the tight end position, because otherwise they've been, if anything, slightly above average against the tight end position instead of average or below average even. So I don't really expect Cade Otton to rush a touchdown or have a chance at a rushing touchdown. Mark Andrews, what's there to say? He's blocking a whole lot. He's not even getting targeted at this point. He's a tough play, but we all know the upside, and it is against Cincinnati. They don't have the best secondary or anything, so could he go off this week? Obviously, he might, but tough to predict that. Obviously, the projections, are incredibly low. I think he has the lowest floor out of anybody who made the cut for projections, and part of the reason he makes the cut is because of his name. Other than that, we got Brenton Strange, Jonnu Smith, Eric All sitting down here, other options, but that's kind of my cutoff there with Mark Andrews. Michael Mayer not currently being projected or, ranked. All right, that is it for the quarterbacks and the tight ends. Thank you very, very much. I will see you Thursday, Saturday evening, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or maybe Sunday morning prior to kickoff, 2 hours. I'm here. Peace out.